Hello, I'm Rex Childhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date reference, today is Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. And being a little bit conservative, a little bit lazy, a little bit active, whatever, this portion of the video is probably going to be used to intro several site visits of our Wish of a Lifetime AARP Regine trip from San Diego to Bastogne for the Battle of the Bulge Battlefields and Museums. I owe Wish of a Lifetime and AARP and Regine a lot for granting this wish. This was probably one of the 5 most emotional events in my life. I'm married, 1 wife, 3 daughters, military career behind me, a lot of other things in my life, and this trip ranks in probably top 5 most emotional events in my life. So let's get on with it. Thanks for watching.
So this video is our trip to the Bastogne War Museum. When we looked at the apps, it said it was 6 minutes away from our hotel, and we were walking. We understood it was either 0.2 or away from our hotel. It turns out to be like 6.5 clicks, 3.5 miles. When we changed our pedometer, our map setting from car to walking, it really jumped. This is a very large, very nicely done museum with both inside and outside features, and what happens is as you enter it, you get the listen to the headphone things, so you can hear the display is talking to you as you go, which is kind of cool. And they're what language do you want them in? They have at least 4. Obviously we took English, and as you walk through it, they have one set of stagnant images, and we'll show you those, and then you get hustled into a audio-visual presentation, really nice, where you get to sit down for a couple minutes and watch and they talk, and then you get moved on to the next static display. So the static displays are between these audio-visual displays, which are really nicely done. And the museum's homepage, I think, says 2 to 2.5 hours. Well, and that's about what it worked out to be, because we followed the sync, but the museum, when we got there, was, number one, very crowded, and there's a lot of material to see. There's too much material to see in each one of these static displays before your slot for the video display shows up. So in reality, like triple the time at the museum. Let's move on. This is a beautiful museum. This Sherman tank was sitting at the entrance. This is your pool where you start in your group to be moved through these displays. And most of the displays are trilingual. So this one here is talking, and I've got where I've got it, and I cut open the displays. Or I trimmed the display so you can read it. So it's talking about why we ended up with World War II. We ended up with World War II because of how Germany was challenged, charged, whatever you want to call it, for conduct during World War I. Fun scenario. These are some of the, this is how the German, and unfortunately it was a very crowded display, how the German occupation continued, and it went on, talking about how Germany was defeated during World War I, how it was disarmed, whatever else, and that set up, as we know, for the rise of individuals like Hitler. A lot of uniforms, both from World War I, World War II, and occasional things from other conflicts I think are thrown in here. As I said, we were being moved through on a schedule, and if there would have been fewer people, and I'm not saying it's bad to have people in a museum, if there had been fewer people in the museum and a little more time in the displays, then it would have gotten to read some of these. So I don't have all the labels. They did have a beautiful Jeep sitting here. One of the things I liked about it, besides Joyce standing by it, and Joyce is wearing her Talk to Me display thing, which was kind of cool. This is an example of the signage that they have throughout most of the museum. As I said, it's usually 3 or 4 languages, and when I take my software and I trim them, then you can read it, and it's talking about why it's called a Jeep, and the primary consensus is because it was something like the M41 general purpose quarter-ton vehicle. GP, pronounced Jeep. It's also, as they reference here, which I've heard, just enough essential parts as an acronym, or Eugene Jeep from the Popeye cartoons, and that one's run around for years too. So why it's called a Jeep? General purpose leads the way. Vehicles like this, U.S. Army vehicles like this, I wish I could have gotten a picture of what this exactly is, because I like knowing it. I don't, so I'm going to move on. Lots of posters around the museum from various things. John Wayne is obviously a big fan. This is obviously a French movie. So the charge, the heroic charge, I think is how it would translate. Not sure. It looks like a Western. And then this one here, actors that I don't recognize. Not sure exactly what the theme line is. And then we come up to Bastogne with Van Johnson. And interesting posters to have around. Here's one for Patton movie, I think is how this translates. So there were a number of these throughout the museum. Kind of fun. So this guy here is, besides being ugly, I'd never seen this before. It's a Licktor Panzerjäger 38, which the T is for tons. Research on it says after the war it was referred to as a Hitzer. It was a light tank destroyer. You know, if you were trying to shoot this thing with another tank and you hit it in the front, unless you hit it right under that turret that probably didn't have a whole lot of mobility to it, that round was just going to go off into the sky. Interesting vehicle, bit ugly, but probably worked pretty darn well. Never saw it in any movies, never saw it anywhere but here. And then there's displays of all sorts of equipment, and there was signage throughout the museum that talked about what most of this was. You don't see it real well, but there's a bicycle here. The German army used a number of things to move their forces around. They used a lot of horses and horse-drawn carts. They used bicycles, tanks, trucks, cars, the thing, whatever else, wagons. But this was also, how did civilians evacuate the war zone? And I think that's what this was showing. The civilians loaded their stuff up on anything they want, anything they get their hands on that would roll, that would help them carry the materials. Because if you leave it behind, chances are it's going to get pilfered. This is obviously an American soldier on the right, telling by his helmet, and on the left, I'm going to guess, because we're in Belgium, that this is a Belgium soldier. And they're in uniform, ready to go to war. So you've got a U.S. Army aviator to the left side in his uniform, and obviously he's flying across the channel because he's wearing a float coat. And then you've got a U.S. Army soldier off in the right side in his uniform. And one of the things I found with the museum was a lot of their displays are covered with glass, and the glass is set up to be somewhat reflective of the lights, whether it's intentional or unintentional. I would believe unintentional. But when you go to take a photo, you get a lot of reflection and double play. You get other images in your photo. If you look, there's reflections of other displays in this photo. A fair amount of maps in here, and if you want to hear, if you want to read in particular Rendezvous with Destiny, the 101st Airborne Museum, 101st Airborne Division's book, excellent. Several other good books on the Battle of Bastogne. Their combat teams were consolidations of multi-talented units that were sent out, and there were three major ones that carried the names of their commanders, so you know who was out there. And I'm going to butcher this one, but it's de Sorby is the guy up in the upper top, then Team Cherry, then Team O'Hara, and they were sent numerous times out to snub the German offensive. And this is one of two maps. This one here is showing how the Germans had planned their advance, and how they encircled Bastogne, which is in the bottom right quadrant, and how they encircled it and how far they got. They got a fair amount away, not anywhere near where they had planned, but they did get a fair amount of progress. Issues, all sorts of issues, supply, command, authorities, whatever else hampered their progress. This Sherman obviously lost the war, and I would hate to have been in this tank when this tank took the hit. So he had tank destroyers that fired shells that were intentionally designed to penetrate the armor of another tank. And so you had tank destroyers, and then you had tanks, and tanks were obviously out there to do numerous things. For the U.S. Army, tanks were normally an infantry support weapon, and for the German Army, the infantry normally supported the tank, so it was kind of flip-flop. For us, the infantry went in, the tank followed it. For the Germans, the tank went in, and the infantry followed it. Kind of fun. More signage. They were talking about, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to jump to the next slide. Two of the things that really got the GIs, the Allies, during the Battle of the Bulge were trench foot and frostbite. And my dad talked about the civilians of Bastogne taking the Allied soldiers into their homes when they were suffering with trench foot and frostbite, and getting them warmed up so they could go back and fight, because they knew that if the Germans retook Bastogne, there was going to be retaliation, severe retaliation. And I think this is, looking at the machine gun, I think that's a German M42 light medium machine gun. So I'm assuming this is a German soldier, German outfit, German mortar. As I said, the displays had good signage, but the problems were there were so many people I couldn't get photos of it, so we just moved on. This is carved out of the signage for a display that I don't have the pistol that they were talking about. The I'm going to jump to the next slide to the Femara 37 pistol, 9mm Hungarian design pistol adapted by the Hungarian Army. German Army made 2 orders, 45,000 pistols in total. The signage was good. Sometimes I didn't get it. And the Germans, as I said, used a lot of bicycles to move their people around. Not sure where this particular bicycle showed up, But at this time of history, a lot of people were riding bicycles around towns and whatever else. Men, women, boys, girls, whatever. It was a primary means of transportation. A map that shows the confusion that's going on, and I think Bastogne is that big red dot just to the right of center, with all the forces converging on it, as Bastogne was not an original priority destination. It was it became a priority when the German forces couldn't take it. They should have blown by it and just left it alone, but they basically said, well, if we're going to advance, we're not going to leave anybody in our rear, and they decided they were going to take Bastogne, and that was actually one of the fatal mistakes of this process. There's some signage around here that talks about the fact that even today they are recovering items from the battlefield. They're being uncovered all the time. This shows some of the wear and tear of these items being buried in the soil around Bastogne. And I don't think the pistol that's in here is serviceable anymore. But I would assume that some ordnanceman has drilled into that artillery round, and that might be a tank round, and made sure that there's nothing dangerous in it anymore. More stuff that's been in the ground for 30, 40, 50 years before it was found. That actually looks like part of an M1 service rifle, commonly called a Grand. Bastogne remembers the horror of war through the Battle of the Bulge, and this is a cemetery depiction of atrocities, of deaths that occurred in the area. And you kind of walk through here and get the feeling they don't want this to happen again. I don't think anybody in their right mind wants it to happen again. On our tour of the battlefield, we were talking to Henri, our guide that was provided by Wish of a Lifetime and AARP. Super individual. He was 9 years old during the Battle of the Bulge, so he's 85, 87, 88 now. And we had numerous discussions. The Germans basically fought with two armies, and I'll call them armies. You had the Wehrmacht, which was the professional soldier, and most of the draftees, and they generally conducted themselves intelligently. Then you had the SS, were the fanatics, and to them there were no rules other than win. Well, atrocities are unfortunately committed on both sides of any battle, or on all sides of any battle. So it's just that the victor is never convicted of them, it seems. But there were atrocities on both sides. That's the result of war, unfortunately. Another map of things that were happening and how they were happening through Bastogne, through Belgium during the Battle of the Bulge. At the end of the inside display, which is really good, and we just kind of stepped through it rapidly, we step outside and we find this eagle, and immediately we know what they're talking about. And in the background is the Marsden Memorial, and we'll get a better shot of that. That was unfortunately under repair. So when we walk up to this eagle, here's the plaque. And may this eagle always symbolize the sacrifices and heroism of the 101st Airborne Division and all of its attached units, December 1944, January 1945. The city and citizens of Bastogne. My dad always wanted to go back. I think the citizens of Bastogne truly loved the GIs, and I think the GIs truly love Bastogne. This plaque is next to the eagle. You can see the eagle off to the right, and I carved it apart. So if you want to read the English portion of it, the statue was dedicated on September 26th, 2008 by His Excellency, the United States Ambassador to Belgium, Sam Fox, the Deputy Mayor of Bastogne, Philippe Collard, and blessed by Dear Jean Maurice Jacques. It is the population of all of Bastogne that offers this gift to the 101st Airborne Division and all of the units attached to it, to thank them for the great sacrifice they made during the winter of 1944-1945. Then down on the bottom, after credits, who did what. The Screaming Eagle is the symbol of the 101st Airborne Division. The wings are raised high to evoke the dove of peace, peace which the units honored here helped to preserve. And the overturned American helmet serves as a reminder to the bloodshed of those who were injured or killed or went missing. The eagle's head is turned toward the helmet, showing its desire to protect the soldiers of the 101st and render them aid. The eagle, with its imposing size, reflects the strength of the 101st Airborne Division. When I read this at the scene, I got goosebumps, and still get goosebumps. Just a shot I'd like to show my dad, who unfortunately died in 1984. Martinson Memorial, that's that 5-star memorial that's in the background here, and it's undergoing renovation, so we couldn't get up and see it. Here's the account written on the walls of the memorial, and we're back to the front. I want to, while we were by the 101st Airborne Eagle, that memorial we just looked at, we got into a conversation with a woman and her male companion. She probably 75 or so, and they were in from Netherlands to sell her mother's house in Bastogne. Her parents and grandparents were residents of Bastogne before, and that's where she grew up, and then she moved to the Netherlands. And her grandfather lived through the Battle of the Bulge and was in the encirclement during the Battle of the Bulge. And the two of us, she was very proficient in English, and told her why we were there, to thank the citizens for my dad. And her grandparents had told her how the citizens of Bastogne and the Allies, the 101st Airborne Division, cooperated together, and how her grandparents had always held the Allies to the highest degree of respect for what they did. And you can see that through the museums, and I'm getting choky. So my dad's wish, voiced several times, usually during times of distress, when friends, relatives, church members, whatever, were in jeopardy, were in harm's way, hurt or injured, say during the Vietnam War, would normally say, let's go out to the garden and pull weeds, which meant I want to talk. And my dad was with the 101st. If you look at his leggings, he was a paratrooper at this point. You can tell that by his uniform. He's the guy on the right, a bit cocky. He was just that way his whole life. And they were at 1942. This one was in jump school. Streets of Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's the guy in the center. He just always has that attitude. Before joining the 101st Airborne, He was up in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, and he was on sentry duty in this one. My mother was in the Waves. She joined the Waves in 1942 and separated in 1945. This is her and her father back in Chicago. And this is as a third-class petty officer. She made it to first-class petty officer in the time frame she was in. And unfortunately, both my mother and my father have passed on. And my wish was to go to Bastogne, complete my dad's wish, and thanks to Wish of a Lifetime and AARP, I think I accomplished that, and I feel very good about that. Yes, I wanted to go to Bastogne to learn history, but I wanted to go to Bastogne to finish my dad's mission, and I think we accomplished that. With that, the next video is going to be the Bastogne Battlefield, being escorted by Henri and being photographed by Henri, and only my photographs are going to appear in that video. Thanks for watching. As I said, this was, to me, even viewing these now, this was a very emotional event for me. Thanks for watching.